Several hundred years ago, the state of Joseon was located on the territory of modern Korea. There were a lot of people living in this state who were engaged in ordinary everyday things, such as agriculture, fishing, and so on. However, what made this state unusual was that almost all of its inhabitants trained every day to become stronger and develop their physique. Yu Suji was the ruler of this state, and he carefully ensured that the inhabitants of his state became stronger and more resilient every day. Every morning Suji came to his people to supervise how his people were doing their training. Even during their work, many residents did not forget about their training and performed it as carefully as possible. Also, the people of Joseon State had a special place where they trained as hard as they could every morning, and every morning Suji came to this place to supervise the training of his people. There were a lot of exercise machines in this place, which were similar to modern exercise machines, thanks to which the people of Joseon could train their bodies much more effectively. Thanks to Suji, most of the men in Joseon had a strong and pumped-up physique. In addition to training, some men also adopted a special diet to make it easier for them to build their muscle mass. However, not all men found it so easy to pump up their bodies, and many found it very difficult to pump up their bodies. While some men pumped up their muscles with ease, others tried their best not to pass out during training. Many Joseon men found it difficult to endure such training, but they still tried their best to become even stronger. Suji was very proud that his people were becoming stronger and more courageous every day. Several centuries have passed since then, and modern Korea was formed in the place where the state used to be. Choi Young-jik was an ordinary Korean who was actively involved in sports and began to study the history of his country at one of the state universities. Young-jik began training since he went to serve in the army, where there were extremely harsh conditions and strict discipline. During his service in the army, Young-jik began to become very interested in bodybuilding, and after the army he began to study at one of the state universities at the history department. However, even after Young-jik started studying at the university, but he still didn't stop training. Young-jik started going to the gym, watching his diet and leading a healthy lifestyle, and after some time his physique became even more pumped up and strong. After some time, Young-jik was able to earn his athletic certification and decided to celebrate with his friends. That evening, Young-jik and his friends had a good time, and after the celebration everyone went home in a good mood. Soon Young-jik returned home, and he decided to have a little snack and watch a couple of videos on the Manhwa channel recaps before bed. After watching a couple of Young's videos, Jik saw in his recommendation feed a documentary video about the state of Joseon and its ruler Sejong. At one point in the video they said that Sejong lived a very short life, and Young-jik believed that it was because of this that Sejong did not exercise and did not lead a healthy lifestyle. At one point, Young-jik began to fall asleep and think about what would happen if he ended up in Joseon and became a sports instructor there. Then Young-jik began to imagine how he could develop a fighting force in Joseon and thereby rewrite the history of Joseon. Young-jik thought it would be great, after which he quickly fell asleep before he even got to the bed. The next morning, Young-jik woke up when someone started asking him about his cough. The stranger's voice Jik was very soon awakened by the crowing of a rooster. Young-jik didn't understand where the rooster's crowing could be coming from, and he simply decided that he had drunk too much beer last night. By Young-jik tried to wake up, he wanted to pick up his phone, but he discovered that his phone was not nearby. Also Young-jik didn't understand why he woke up not in his apartment, but in a traditional Korean house. However, the strongest one is Young-jik was shocked why, instead of a pumped-up and strong body, he had a very thin and weak body. Meanwhile, the unfamiliar voice continued to tell Young-jik that it was already morning and that it was time for him to get up. Young-jik couldn't believe his eyes, and he decided to open the door of the house, hoping to understand what happened to him. Young-jik opened the door of the house and a man stood next to him and asked Young-jik, "Is his cough gone?" Also Young-jik saw a small courtyard with people in traditional clothes. Young-jik did not understand anything, and he asked the man standing next to him what his name was. At first the man did not understand Young's question Jika, and he told him his name was Suji, and then Young-jik guessed that his father's name was Lee Do. The man then confirmed that Suji's father was none other than Lee Do Sejong, who was the fourth ruler of Joseon. Suji then believed that since his father was known as Sejong the Great, then Suji was the great Prince Jinyang. Based on all this data, Young-jik realized that he had somehow mysteriously ended up in Joseon, and that he was the very great Prince Jinyang. Jinyang couldn't believe that he was actually in Joseon, and he felt that everything seemed too realistic to him. At one point, one of the subjects called Yong Jinyang, and then Yong remembered that he actually ended up somewhere in the middle of the 15th century, when Joseon still existed. Then Jinyang began to get very nervous, since he knew what significant historical figures he would have to see, including the fourth king of Joseon, Sejong. Jinyang began to get more and more nervous, and soon Sejong himself called him to give him a special task, and found himself in the same room with Sejong. Jinyang was simply shocked by what he saw. At this moment, Jinyang saw a very rounded Sejong in front of him, who was having a very hard time breathing, and was not at all like the Sejong that Jinyang had read about in history books in his previous life. Jinyang couldn't hide his surprise, and Sejong simply assumed that Jinyang simply hadn't woken up yet, and hadn't had time to come to his senses. At one point, Jinyang decided to bow down to Sejong just in case, but Sejong himself did not understand what Jinyang was doing. Suddenly, unexpectedly for himself, Jinyang noticed how much the structure of his speech and his vocabulary had changed, and he began to speak the same way as all the inhabitants of Joseon times. Then Jinyang began to ask Sejong for forgiveness for showing such ignorance, but Sejong himself said that he did not hear any ignorance in his son's words. After this, Sejong told Jinyang that he greatly appreciated his talents, and so he asked Jinyang to rewrite the Kangmak, which described all the events in Joseon. Sejong said that in order to carry out this assignment, Jinyang must go to the Chihyunjang Educational Institution, after which Jinyang went to Chipyeongjing. After some time, Jinyang reached Chipyeongjing, where many different scientists usually gather, where they conducted their scientific research. Once in Chipyeongjang, Jinyang thought that if he found himself in this era, he would have to regularly visit this place in search of various historical data about Joseon. One of the visitors to Chipyeongjang told Jinyang that if he could rewrite the Kangmak, he would receive many eulogies, and the people of Joseon would honor Jinyang even more. However, Jinyang told the stranger that Yong, the Grand Prince of Anpyeong State, had much better handwriting, and the stranger thought that Jinyang was just being a little modest. After a couple of minutes, Jinyang began to study Kanmak, and he was surprised that he not only understood the local speech well, but also perfectly understood the local written language. After a couple of seconds, Jinyang noticed that the Kangmak had very large characters, and he believed that Sejong had some vision problems. Jinyang also applied his knowledge as a sports instructor from a past life, and he concluded that his father Sejong suffered from second-degree obesity, which led him to serious health problems. In addition, Jinyang noticed that even though it was quite cool this morning, Sejong's face was dripping with a lot of sweat. Jinyang then concluded that the fourth king of Joseon, Sejong, suffered from severe diabetes. From his past life, Jinyang knew that with such indicators, Sejong would soon die and leave behind a successor. Sejong's successor will be Jinyang's older brother Li Hyang, who will receive the title of King Munjang, who will also die soon after the coronation from severe weakening in the body. After King Munjang, Tanjong will sit on the throne, but during his reign, an assassin will break into his royal palace and kill all the representatives of the royal family, including Tanjong himself. Then Jinyang thought that he should never allow Sejong to die so early. Li Hyang, who was Sejong's eldest son and who was supposed to be the next successor to the royal throne, arrived in Chipyeongjing. Entering Chipyeongjing, I was somewhat surprised that Jinyang was here, since he usually prefers to go to the mountains to hunt. Jinyang believed that Li Hyang came here for some urgent purpose, but Li Hyang said that he just wanted to check the current condition of the books that would be sent to Sejong. After that, Li Hyang headed towards the exit and told Jinyang that he did not want to distract him, and that he could continue to do his own thing. However, Jinyang did not understand how Li Hyang did not notice that the books that were supposed to be sent to Sejong had two small characters, and he decided to stop Li Hyang. Jinyang told his elder brother that he would like to read some of these books, but the characters were too small and needed to be rewritten to make them easier to read. Then Li Hyang felt that Jinyang really had something to add to these books, and he asked Jinyang if he knew that Sejong had presbyopia, or senile farsightedness. Jinyang then told his elder brother that he suspected something similar, but he was not completely sure of his guesses. Then Li Hyang thought about the transience of life, since before his father very often boasted of his greatness. Then Jinyang asked Li Hyang when Sejong began to show such symptoms, and Li Hyang said that such deterioration in Sejong's condition began to appear a year ago. Hyang also said that this presbyopia was very different from normal presbyopia, and that Sejong had other symptoms in addition to poor vision, but he asked Jin Yang to keep this information secret. Soon, Li Hyang decided to leave Chipyeongjin, and after he left, several scientists entered the room. Soon, Jin Yang began to feel a slight pain in the back of his head, and he believed that it was because he had been sitting still for too long. Then Jin Yang decided to do a little stretching for his neck to get rid of the pain. First, Jin Yang tilted his head back, after which he began to rotate his head to stretch his cervical vertebrae. After this, Jin Yang stretched his head forward and his shoulders back, and after all these actions, all the pain in the back and back of the head disappeared. At this moment, Jin Yang experienced an incredible sensation of missing pain, while the people who were looking at him did not understand what Jin Yang had just done and why he suddenly felt so good. People did not understand why Jin Yang made such unusual movements, since if he has neck pain, he can turn to a massage therapist. At first, Jin Yang didn't understand why these people were looking at him so strangely, and then he remembered that these people still don't know what stretching is. At that time, people had already begun to practice massage therapy, but at that time it was not very effective, since at that time people did not yet know how human muscles work. Jin Yang then told people that he had recently injured his neck while riding a horse, but after these movements, all the pain in his neck completely disappeared and he immediately felt better. Jin Yang also said that this simple exercise is very good for the neck muscles, and he said that he can easily teach them to do this exercise. After that, everyone sat down at the chairs, and Jin Yang began to show them the correct sequence of movements. First, people threw their heads back as much as possible, after which they began to rotate their heads in different directions. With the last movement, people had to straighten their backs, stretch their heads forward and throw their shoulders back. At first, people did not believe that they could so easily get rid of pain in the neck area, but after all the body movements they had done, they immediately felt extremely pleasant sensations. The next day, Li Hyang went to Jipneojong again, but he was somewhat surprised at the pace of what everyone was doing. Li Hyang did not understand how these people could get rid of neck pain in such an easy way, and without the help of a massage therapist. Soon, everyone in Joseon learned about an exercise that could relieve neck pain, and soon this exercise became known as the stretching whale. However, despite such an effective exercise, Jin Yang still had another headache. To get rid of this headache, Jin Yang went to the local market, where all the necessary ingredients were located. One of the local sellers was extremely surprised that Jin Yang himself deigned to go to the market with ordinary people, since usually representatives of the royal family try not to contact the residents. Jin Yang told the seller that he came here to buy oil such as sesame, but the seller said that he did not have sesame oil, but he did have beef oil. Then Jin Yang handed the money to the seller and asked him to provide him with 5 pieces of beef butter, and that its quality be as low as possible. Suddenly, one of the customers wondered why Jin Yang needed such ingredients as beef oil and several medicinal roots. From his previous life, Jin Yang knew that he was going to die from dermatitis, and he decided to collect the necessary medicines as soon as possible, since in these times, dermatitis was considered a fatal and incurable disease. After some time, Jin Yang bought all the ingredients needed for the medicine, after which he returned home. Soon, a woman appeared behind Jin Yang and said that she noticed how Jin Yang began to increasingly go to the neighboring street. Jin Yang then called this woman his wife and told her that after reading some books in Chipneojong, he decided to try to implement some of his experimental ideas. Then the woman said that she was somewhat worried that Jin Yang now preferred to engage in various despicable work instead of his favorite hunt. Jin Yang told his wife that he was in Jipyeongjiang, and there he found an old book that stated the creation of an invention for washing the body, and he would like to create it. This very invention that Jin Yang wanted to make was ordinary soap, and Jin Yang believed that in Joseon he could not do without it. In the 21st century, people can still experience various skin diseases that are caused by wearing dirty clothes, thereby causing various inflammations. Any dirt such as rust or sweat could also lead to further development of skin diseases. One day Yongjik wanted to try making his own soap, so he turned to the grandmother of the owner of the gym where he worked and trained. The ingredients used were natural olive oil, water and the ash of burnt rice straw, and when all these ingredients were mixed and heated, an excellent soap was produced. Jin Yang's wife did not understand how to wash herself with oil, because if the oil gets on the skin, the body will only become dirtier. Then Jin Yang told his wife that thanks to soap, you can not only wash yourself, but also wash away various stains and dirt on clothes, which made the process of washing clothes and washing your body much easier. After that, Jin Yang's wife was silent for a while and moved on, and Jin Yang for a moment thought that his wife was dissatisfied with something, and he felt that his relationship with his wife was very strained. Jin Yang did not dwell on his wife's behavior and went to the kitchen, where he wanted to prepare soap. Jin Yang experimented with the proportions of the ingredients, and after several attempts he was able to achieve the desired foaming. Despite the good foaming, Jin Yang was wondering how effective his soap would be. The resulting liquid began to give off a strong unpleasant odor, and Jin Yang decided that he should try this soap first. Soon the soap-making liquid hardened, and then Jin Yang cut out several pieces of soap and went to test his soap in practice. After this, Jin Yang decided to try the soap in action, and even with some minor shortcomings, the soap cleaned Jin Yang's body and clothes well. Jin Yang especially liked the pleasant smell of the soap, which was obtained thanks to the sesame oil in the soap. At one point, Jin Yang believed that he would be able to establish mass production of his soap and sell it abroad. However, Jin Yang suddenly began to worry about Sejong's current condition, as even Taejong, Sejong's father, had failed to get his son to do anything with his body. Then Jin Yang believed that even if his own father could not force Sejong to solve the problem of his condition, then he certainly would not be able to persuade Sejong to take care of his health. Then Jin Yang thought that if he somehow tried to persuade Sejong to take up sports, then Sejong would probably think that his son was just doing nonsense. Also, Jin Yang feared that otherwise Sejong would send him to Myeongdo or to Lamdo, which are now known as Ulleungdo and Jejudo. When Jin Yang finished washing, he figured that he needed to outsmart Sejong with logic to deal with his obesity. Jin Yang also thought that he himself should lose weight and build muscle mass, and perhaps this could also influence Sejong's decision to go in for sports. At first, Jin Yang planned to do 3 basic exercises, so that over time his muscles and body would become stronger, and so that he could lift 400 kilograms of weight. Jin Yang also thought about making bodybuilding a real science, and writing a book on bodybuilding. Jin Yang was confident that if people began to study bodybuilding and train hard, he would be able to create one of the most powerful states of the 15th century. Jin Yang also believed that if a person tries to bring to an ideal state the body that his parents gave him, then he shows respect to his parents. After washing, Jin Yang went outside where he wanted to start training, and the first thing he wanted to start with was pull-ups. Many people who looked at Jin Yang began to suspect that there was simply something wrong with Jin Yang, and that he had gone crazy. After doing the pull-ups, Jin Yang noticed that this body had a very interesting natural predisposition. After the pull-ups, Jin Yang began weighted arm extensions and curls, and managed to complete this exercise 29 times. After doing arm extensions and curls, Jin Yang began doing push-ups, and he was able to do as many as 82 push-ups in a row. After doing the push-ups, Jin Yang decided to do the dragon plank, and he did this exercise so many times that at one point he just stopped counting how many times he did the dragon plank. Suddenly Jin Yang noticed that even with such a large and sagging belly, he performed all the exercises without any difficulty. Then Jin Yang believed that this was all thanks to the genes of Taejo Lee Songjiwai, the founder and first ruler of Joseon. Soon, Jin Yang finished his training, and at that moment, people came to him and brought him his goods. These people brought Jin Yang several iron dumbbells, with which Joseon could perform even more different exercises. After this, the pleased Jin Yang told the people that he would pay back right now for the fact that these people had made him such excellent dumbbells. Jin Yang received his dumbbells and gave the people 80 kilograms of rice as payment for their work, after which the people looked at the happy Jin Yang with suspicion and moved on. On the way, people were discussing how crazy Jin Yang was, since he gave 80 kilograms of rice for these pieces of iron, because even samurai do not have such an urgent need for so much iron. Then the first man began to worry that Jin Yang was planning to gather an army, but the second man said that they had just done their job and they shouldn't worry about anything else. At this moment, Jin Yang had already started training with dumbbells, since exercises with his own weight were not enough for him to effectively pump his body and muscles. Jin Yang's wife's servant, who saw Jin Yang training, told his wife that there was something wrong with Prince Jin Yang. Jin Yang's wife's servant said that they needed to take some action, but Jin Young's wife said that she didn't want to talk about it. Jin Young's wife's servant continued to talk about how Prince Jin Young first began to cover himself with oil while washing, and now he gave 80 kilograms of rice for an ordinary pile of iron. Also, Jin Young's wife's servants remembered the times when Prince Jin Young used to enjoy hunting with his friends and began to completely ignore his wife. Then Jin Young's wife's servant asked her mistress what she did in her past life that her husband stopped paying attention to her. Then Jin Young's wife again asked her servant to stop talking about it, after which the servant immediately apologized and fell silent. At this moment, Jin Young's wife began to remember with warmth in her heart the times when she and her husband walked around the palace grounds, and how cherry blossoms grew everywhere. During another walk through the palace courtyard, Jin Young gave his wife a cherry blossom branch as a sign of his love and devotion to her. At this moment, Jin Young's wife picked up that same branch to cut it into 2 parts, thinking that every day she was losing her husband more and more. Jin Young's wife cut a cherry blossom branch and told her servants that she would like to go to bed early today, and that she would like to be alone with her thoughts. Jin Young's wife went to wash herself, and next to the candles she saw the soap that Jin Young had made. Jin Young's wife took the soap in her hands, looking at it and trying to understand exactly how they should wash. Jin Young's wife decided to try washing herself with soap, and she began to slowly and carefully rub the soap over her body. Jin Young's wife was surprised at how the soap started producing so many bubbles and how effectively the soap cleaned her skin. After another workout, Jin Young decided to wash himself again, and he thought that at his next workout he should start training with even more weight. Suddenly someone entered the bathhouse, and then Jin Young noticed that it turned out to be his wife. Jin Young was very happy when his wife told him that she liked his soap, which cleaned her body perfectly. The only thing that did not suit Jin Young's wife was that the soap had too much of an oil smell, and she was afraid that people passing by would think that she was the wife of a soap merchant. Then Jin Young thought that he should replace the sesame oil with pork or beef oil, but all these oils were very expensive, which would interfere with the mass production and sale of soap. Then Jin Young's wife suggested that her husband use linseed oil instead of sesame oil, which would make the soap have a more pleasant smell and make its production cheaper. After that, Jin Young thanked his wife, to which Jin Young's wife herself said that it was all nothing, after which she immediately became embarrassed. After this, Jin Young went to a coastal village where one of Jin Young's acquaintances lived. Soon Jin Young reached this village, and there he met the same acquaintance who had been a beater during his last winter hunt. During a hunt, this man was seriously injured when he was attacked by a deer, and that time this man saved Jin Young by taking all the wrath of the angry deer upon himself. Jin Young said that even though a lot of time has passed since then, he still remembers how this man helped him, and Jin Young wanted to thank this man. Jin Young told the man that he would now send his family 2 bags of rice, 2 bottles of sesame oil, eggs, chicken and other food items once every 2 weeks. In exchange for this, Jin Young only asked the man to report to him every 2 weeks information about changes in the height and weight of his children. After this, Jin Young decided to provide similar food support to 20 more villages and begin to record changes in the height and weight of local children. At first, Jin Young wanted to give local residents a protein, carbohydrate and fat diet in order to record changes in the children's physique and their motor abilities. Jin Young also wanted to show Sejong by a clear example how important it is to stick to proper nutrition, so that it would be easier to get him to start taking care of his health. After this, Jin Young went to the local blacksmiths, whom he wanted to ask to make him several things. First, Jin Young showed the blacksmiths a diagram of a training barbell and several iron plates for the future barbell. Jin Young also explained to the blacksmiths that iron plates should be mounted on both ends of the bar, and that each iron pancake should weigh 30 kilograms. The blacksmiths carried out simple calculations and realized that if they made 8 such iron pancakes, then the entire training structure would weigh more than 200 kilograms. Jin Young also said that over time he would need even more of these iron pancakes. The blacksmiths were shocked when Jin Young said that this barbell should be strong and stable enough so that in the future he could lift a weight of 300 kilograms. After that, Jin Young put his hand into his sleeve, pulled out another diagram, and said that he had one more thing to do. Jin Young took out a drawing and asked the blacksmiths to make one iron plate and roll its rod about 3 feet long. Jin Young wondered whether, given the technical conditions of the Joseon era, it would be possible to make a working jokion, a firearm that was previously used in Joseon. On the way home, Jin Yun thought about how he had undergone many positive changes since he arrived in this era. Also on the way home, Jin Yun told one of the blacksmiths with whom he was walking that now with all his heart he wants to restore order in Joseon. At one point, Jin Yang decided to evaluate some of the physical parameters of the blacksmith with whom he walked to the royal estate. Jin Yang was shocked that this blacksmith had a surprisingly very strong and muscular body, to which the blacksmith himself said that he had had such a physique since childhood. Then Jin Yang believed that this blacksmith would be ideal for his first tests, and he invited the blacksmith to become his student on the path of improving his body. The young blacksmith immediately accepted Jin Yang's offer, and did not know how he could thank Jin Yang, to which Jin Yang himself said that there was no need for this. The next day, Jin Yang was going to meet his brother in Chipyeongjong. Soon, Jin Yang met with Li Hyang, and Li Hyang immediately noticed some changes in Jin Yang. Li Hyang was happy that his brother managed to lose weight, and then he asked Jin Yang what he wanted to talk to him about. Then Jin Yang told Li Hyang that his complexion had improved after his new hardening method, and then Li Hyang asked Jin Yang what other new hardening method he was talking about. After that, Jin Yang took out a small box, opened it, and showed Li Hyang his soap, after which he asked his elder brother to try using the soap. After this, Jin Yang and Li Hyang went outside to the same water source, where Li Hyang was supposed to try Jin Yang's soap. After a couple of minutes, Li Hyang was pleasantly surprised at how the soap was able to clean the dirt off his hands so easily. However, when Li Hyang smelled his hands, he told Jin Yang that the oil would make soap production very expensive. Then Jin Yang remembered his wife's words that if in the process of making soap he used tetradium oil along with a couple of handfuls of rice, the production will be cheaper. After that, Jin Yang and Li Hyang returned back to Chipyeongjong, where Li Hyang took out a piece of paper and began to write something down there. Jin Yang picked up a piece of paper on which Li Hyang wrote that he managed to get rid of severe dirt thanks to soap, and that now all officials should wash their hands with soap every day. Li Hyang believed that despite the price of soap, almost anyone could afford it, but due to the unknown nature of soap, no one would buy it in large quantities. Li Hyang also said that first he would like to force all officials to wash their hands with soap, so that in the future they will start washing their entire bodies with soap. In addition, Li Hyang proposed to first start selling soap at private auctions so that he could impose his own tax on it, and thereby receive a new source of income. Then Jin Yang was once again convinced that Li Hyang truly fully justified his status as the future king of Joseon. Meanwhile, the blacksmiths were actively working to create all those items that Jin Yang ordered from them. At one point, one man asked the blacksmith workers if they were sure that Jin Yang ordered exactly what they were doing. Then one of the blacksmiths said that they would face severe punishment if they made even one mistake during their work. However, one of the blacksmiths told all the other blacksmiths that they must right now destroy everything that they had already done during this time for Jin Yang. However, all the other blacksmiths said that they could not do this, since they had already managed to make most of the things for Jin Yang, and that Jin Yang should come for his orders in the coming days. Then this blacksmith told his workers that if money was more valuable to them than their own lives, then they could continue to work on products for Jin Yang. At one point, a man in a black suit and a large hat began to suspect that Jin Yang started all this because he was unable to obtain the right to inherit. Jin Yang really was. The next day, Li Hyang ordered all officials to use the soap that Jin Yang created. Soon, many officials began discussing with each other how they could easily clean ink stains from their hands using soap. People were especially surprised that in addition to ink on their hands, soap also helped remove oil from the skin, considering soap to be some kind of incredible miracle cure. The officials were also very surprised that all this soap was created by Jin Yang, who had never before done such things that were useful to people. Meanwhile, Jin Yang was actively training with new barbells and iron plates for them. The first thing Jin Yang wanted to do was do some bench presses, which were great for pumping up the chest and arm muscles. After a couple of minutes, Jin Yang managed to bench press 10 times in a row with a total barbell weight of 120 kilograms. After the exercises, Jin Yang was amazed that his muscles were developing so quickly, as if the god of bodybuilding himself was helping him. Jin Yang finished doing the bench press, and the blacksmith who was belaying Jin Yang during the exercise told Jin Yang that he was doing a great job lifting such a large weight. Jin Yang believed that even though this barbell was more like the barbells that no one usually uses in the gym, it was still very useful. However, at first Jin Yang had some difficulties in making all these rods and iron plates, since the blacksmiths not only did not have time to complete their work, but also did not cope with the overall design. After Jin Yang finished the exercises, he told his blacksmith that it was his turn to exercise. The blacksmith immediately got scared and told Jin Yang that if he tried to lift this barbell would immediately crush him. Then Jin Yang, with a terrifying look, told his blacksmith that the human body must always develop, and that it constantly needs to be hardened. After a couple of seconds, the blacksmith finally decided to try to lift the barbell, and during the exercise, Jin Yang told the blacksmith that during this exercise he should use both the upper and lower parts of the body. Jin Yang's wife was very surprised by her husband's new transformation, since she believed that her husband was quite slender before, and now his body seemed to shine with strength. Meanwhile, Jin Yang's wife's servants felt that Jin Yang could now be compared to General Wenman. Jin Yang is flattered to be compared to General Wenman, and for a moment, he even forgot that he had to ensure the blacksmith. Then Jin Yang began to tell his wife and her servants about how brave and courageous Wenman was in his youth, and how in adulthood Wenman became one of the best generals in the entire history of Joseon. While Jin Yang continued to talk about General Wenman, the blacksmith could no longer hold the heavy barbell normally. At one point, everyone heard a very loud sound coming from the direction of the door. Later, everyone realized that someone started knocking very hard on the entrance gate. Then Jin Yang headed towards the gate with thoughts of who dared to knock on the gate so unceremoniously. Jin Yang did not have time to approach the gate, and people in dark outfits had already begun to approach from there. Among the uninvited guests was also Captain Li Qi, who was Jin Yang's longtime rival. Jin Yang's wife began to express indignation that these people had broken into Prince Jin Yang's domain, and such bravery greatly frightened Jin Yang's wife's servants. One of the men in dark clothes extended his hand towards Jin Yang's wife, and told her that he knew where he ended up and that he really wanted the woman to shut up right now. At the same moment, Jin Yang ran up to the stranger and pushed him hard away from his wife. The man fell to the ground and was surprised that Jin Yang was able to push him so easily and knock him down. Jin Yang asked the man how he dared to talk to his wife like that. The other men in dark clothes were greatly outraged by Jin Yang's behavior, and then they prepared their swords in case Jin Yang tried to attack them. Then Captain Li Qi came out from behind his subordinates and reminded Jin Yang how they met at last year's hunting competition. Jin Yang recognized Captain Li Qi and he told him that if he dared to harm his people, he would attack Captain Li Qi without warning, after which he asked him why he came here. Then one of Li Qi's men became very angry with Jin Yang for talking to his captain like that, and then Li Qi told Jin Yang that what he was holding was made of 24 swords. Later, Li Qi looked at the rest of Jin Yang's rods, and then he asked Jin Yang why he suddenly needed all these rods. Also, Li Qi's people showed Jin Yang the man with whom he went hunting last year, and now this man was in very serious condition. Then Li Qi believed that Jin Yang was planning to organize a rebellion against his own family with the help of ordinary residents, in order to later become the rightful ruler of Joseon. Then Jin Yang told Li Qi that these were just his personal speculations, and then he said that Li Qi was neglecting his authority since he brought his soldiers to his house. However, Li Qi told Jin Yang that he did not need any proof, as he was fully confident that Jin Yang was planning to organize a rebellion with the help of ordinary people. Li Qi also told Jin Yang that he and his people always act this way and always reach the truth. Then Jin Yang asked Li Qi what would happen if it turned out that he was wrong in his arguments, but Li Qi completely ruled out such an option, and he was confident that he was right. Li Qi also told Jin Yang that until he told the truth, he would torture people from the villages to which he provided supplies. Jin Yang then felt that even if he told Li Qi the whole truth, he would still not calm down, and would continue to try to show his worst side. Jin Yang also thought that after he ended up in this body and in this era, he did not do anything wrong, and he could not know what bad things he could have done before. At that moment, Li Yang came out of the house to try to understand what was happening here. Jin Yang looked at his older brother, and was somewhat surprised that Li Yang looked a little healthier than usual. Li Yang told Jin Yang that he personally came here because some bad rumors had started circulating about him. Li Yang was getting closer and closer to Jin Yang, and then Li Qi asked Li Yang to be careful, since no one knows what a man like Jin Yang can do to him. Then Li Yang asked Li Qi to watch his speech when he called Jin Yang a man. Yang also told Li Qi that Jin Yang was still his own younger brother, and he would like to give him the opportunity to explain the reasons for his actions. Yang also told Li Qi that even though they were brothers, it would not be easy for them to clear their names from such shameful rumors. Then Li Hyang said that if Li Qi did not provide him with strong arguments in favor of his personal guesses, then he would make him greatly regret his words. Jin Yang then told Li Hyang and Li Qi that he would need some help in order to explain his motives. Then Jin Yang asked the blacksmith to bring him the book he was writing, after which the blacksmith left for a while. A couple of minutes later, the blacksmith returned with the book that Jin Yang was writing, and he told everyone that he was writing a book in which he described the teachings of a healthy lifestyle. After this, Jin Yang handed over his book to Li Hyang, who became interested in what was so important that was described in this book. As soon as Li Hyang opened Jin Yang's book, he read that a person should express respect for his parents by caring for the body that was given to him by his parents. However, Li Hyang still could not understand how taking care of his body was connected with all the things that Jin Yang needed. Then Jin Yang leaned in front of Li Hyang and whispered to him that he couldn't say this in front of everyone, and he wanted to tell him everything in private. Then Jin Yang reminded Li Hyang of the grave condition their father was in now. Li Hyang told Jin Yang that Presbyopia had caught up with his father earlier, and he would like to hear from Jin Yang his knowledge of medicine, since he is so worried about their father's condition. Jin Yang then told Li Hyang that their father had recently been dripping a lot of sweat despite the cool weather, and he believed that their father was having bouts of fever. Jin Yang also said that he had some suspicions that their father was showing signs of diabetes, which somewhat surprised Li Hyang himself. Jin Yang believed that Sejong's diabetes developed due to excess yang energy, which was provoked by Sejong's excess nutrition. Jin Yang believed that due to Sejong not engaging in any physical activity, excess yang energy was accumulating in his body, which could directly affect his vision. Then Li Hyang asked Jin Yang why he suddenly began supplying food to the children of ordinary residents of Kosnoa. Jin Yang said that in this way he learned that for simple weight gain it is enough to eat a few spoonfuls of rice and eggs, and his book contains all the reports on nutrition and exercise. Ultimately, Jin Yang wanted to write this book to convince Sejong of what he wrote and persuade him to take up physical activity. Hyang then told Li Qi to recall his soldiers, and Li Hyang said that Jin Yang had absolutely no bad intentions. However, Li Qi refused to withdraw his troops, and he said that he and his men were monitoring the behavior of the citizens of Joseon, and that the king would not like the fact that someone dared to challenge the rights of his soldiers. Li Qi also pointed to his soldiers and said that among them were the most competent inspectors of various ranks, among whom there was even one young official who had only recently joined the ranks of his inspectors. Then Li Qi said that he could not leave here until he knew all of Jin Yang's true intentions. After that, Li Qi took out his fan, extended it towards Jin Yang, and said that if they want to drive them away, then let them start with him. Li Qi also told Li Hyang that he should not cover up someone's intentions just because of his relationship with that person. Li Qi also demanded from Li Hyang that he be firm and show the whole world the greatness of the laws of his country. Jin Yang looked at Li Qi and thought that he became the chief inspector for a reason, and he believed that if some measures were not taken, then this problem would not only affect him and Li Hyang. Then Li Hyang told Jin Yang that he would no longer be able to tell Li Qi, and he asked Jin Yang to explain on his own why he bought all these iron devices. Then Jin Yang told Li Hyang that he was ready to personally show the purpose of all these iron products with the help of his strength. Then Jin Yang once again told Li Hyang that due to excess yang energy, Sejong's vision had deteriorated, but Jin Yang was confident that if Sejong began to harden his body, he would be able to cope with his illness. Jin Yang also told Li Hyang that Sejong showed virtually no physical activity, and he hoped that over time he would be able to interest Sejong to take up physical training. Jin Yang also hoped that he would be able to convince his father to harden his body if Jin Yang showed strength comparable to that of Xiang Yu, a general of the Jin Empire. Then Jin Yang believed that if he could not convince Li Qi and his soldiers of the correctness of his intentions, then he certainly would not be able to convince his father. After this, Li Hyang told Li Qi and his soldiers that Jin Yang was developing methods for healing the human body, and all his iron devices were needed for training the human body. However, Li Qi still could not believe that all these iron objects, each of which weighed more than the heaviest cauldron, were intended for training. Then Li Hyang believed that it was because of all these iron devices that Li Qi came here with his inspection. Then Li Hyang invited Li Qi to show Jin Yang's strength in order to show them the true purpose of all these iron devices in practice, and clear Jin Yang's good name. Then one volunteer came out from the crowd of soldiers and wanted to compete with Jin Yang in strength. The volunteer told Jin Yang that if he lost to him in strength, it would become obvious to everyone that he was lying to everyone. After a couple of minutes, Jin Yan and the volunteer prepared to perform bench presses with the same barbell weight to see which of them would be stronger. Before starting to perform the bench press, Jin Yan explained to the volunteer that this exercise is good for strengthening the arm muscles from the elbow to the hand, chest, and shoulders. However, the volunteer did not accept Jin Yang from fishing, and he believed that everything depended on the strength of the person. Then Jin Yang began to perform the bench press and believed that the volunteer was simply afraid that he would be able to defeat the volunteer. Such words made the volunteer even more angry, which only motivated him more to defeat Jin Yang. It was very difficult for the volunteer to hold the barbell, but he could not give up so easily, since now the honor of the chief inspector was at stake. Then the volunteer put in even more effort to be able to lift such a heavy barbell. After a few seconds, the volunteer still managed to lift the barbell for the first time. After this, one of the soldiers who was ensuring the volunteer wanted to see how Jin Yang lifted the same barbell. At this moment, Jin Yang put a little more effort into lifting the same barbell. The volunteer looked at Jin Yang and grinned at the fact that at first Jin Yang pretended to be so strong, but now he couldn't lift the barbell. However, by that time, Jin Yang had already performed the bench press 8 times, and now he is finishing lifting the barbell for the 9th time. Everyone was shocked that Jin Yang managed to perform so many bench presses in such a short time, and Li Qi was the most surprised. After this, the competition ended, and everyone was completely convinced that Jin Yang actually used his iron equipment specifically for training. At this moment, the volunteer felt very ashamed that he could lose so easily in trying to defend the honor of the chief inspector. Then Jin Yan told the volunteer that nutrition and the amount of training depend on the goal. The volunteer was also very surprised when Jin Yang said that thanks to his diet and training system, he was able to lift weight up to 175 kilograms. The volunteer could not believe what he heard, and he believed that the victory over him simply turned Jin Yang's head, after which he left with Li Qi and the rest of the soldiers. Li Qi and his soldiers headed towards the exit, and Li Qi told Jin Yang that this time they would let them go, but he was still under suspicion. Li Qi also told Jin Yang that he would continue to do his duty, and Jin Yang believed that Li Qi was hinting that he would continue to watch over him. Then Jin Yang told Li Qi that in that case he would also watch him and his soldiers. After that, Li Qi finally left, and Jin Yang was glad that this time they managed to avoid a serious conflict. From then on, Li Hiang began to help Jin Yang complete his book, and then Jin Yang felt that along with one problem, he also received a good opportunity. Jin Yang also believed that if everything had gone differently, he would have found himself in a more hopeless situation. After Li Qi left, Jin Yan apologized to his wife and told her that he would now be more careful and discuss all his future plans with her. Jin Yan wanted to say something else to his wife, but suddenly his legs began to give way, causing him to almost fall. Jin Yang's wife managed to catch her fallen husband and prevent him from falling to the ground. At this moment, everyone, including Jin Yang's wife herself, felt that Mr. Jin Yang was behaving somewhat indecently. After a couple of seconds, Jin Yang was able to get back on his feet, and his wife told him that if he wanted to do this with her, then they should retire to their chambers, after which Jin Yang retired to his wife. That same evening, volunteer Li Qi began to apologize to his captain for failing to defend his honor. Li Qi said that they should not worry about what had already happened, and he told his soldiers that he was able to gain some benefit from what had happened. Li Qi said that among all the metal products of Jin Yang, he was able to notice one interesting thing, which was very similar to a metal tubular weapon. Then Li Qi felt that Jin Yang needed this item for a reason, and Li Qi thought that Jin Yang was going to improve the existing firearms. At last year's hunting competition, Li Qi saw how Jin Yang, without any pity, dealt with one of the prey, like a ferocious and bloodthirsty beast. Li Qi could not believe that the Jin Yang whom he saw then was now busy with issues of improving the health of the human body. That day, Li Qi promised himself that he would personally monitor him in order to later reveal all his true plans. 3 months have passed since then, and one day something happened that Jin Yang could not have expected. That day, Jin Yan was training as usual, and at one point his wife approached him with the news that she was pregnant. Jin Yang couldn't believe what his wife had just told him, and he thought that they had conceived a child that day when they secluded themselves after Li Qi and his soldiers left. At this moment, Jin Yang remembered a moment in his past life when he once again went to a bar with his friend, who told him that he could not go to the gym because he had a 3-year-old son. Then Young Jik told his friend that playing sports could greatly change his life for the better, giving him a powerful surge of strength and vigor after each workout. Then friend Young Jika asked him if he should listen to advice from a man who had never married in more than 30 years of his life. Then Young Jik jokingly told his friend that he had 2 spouses, which were his barbell and dumbbell. Back then, Jin Yang couldn't believe that one day he would actually become a father. Then Jin Yang picked up his wife and couldn't help but be happy that he would actually become a father. Jin Yang was so happy about this news that he wanted to convey such good news to Sejong as soon as possible. Jin Yang's wife was glad that the news of her pregnancy made her husband so happy. First of all, Jin Yang decided to do some simple exercises with his wife so that he could get a rough idea of how childbirth might go. At first, Jin Yang decided to do some simple stretching with his wife to see if his wife would experience fatigue during childbirth, but this was not enough. Jin Yang remembered that in this era, childbirth could lead to death due to some complications, and then Jin Yang felt that he needed to create a disinfectant in time to reduce the risks of childbirth. Within a few days, Jin Yang was able to create sojut-kori, a special container used to store soju, a traditional ancient Korean alcoholic drink. After this, Jin Yang called a local doctor to see him, to whom he wanted to show his invention. Jin Yang showed the doctor that he first pours alcohol into a container, which passes through a special narrow tube that cools the contents in the container. After this, Jin Yang ordered to bring him all the soju that was in the house in order to test the operation of his device in practice. After a while, Jin Yang was able to extract the alcohol he needed from soju, and he wanted to test the purity of the alcohol. In order to check the purity of the alcohol, Jin Yang took out another container, which was 80% filled with water. The specific gravity of pure alcohol must be 0.8%, and Jin Yang could not allow the container with alcohol to be lighter or heavier than the container with water. After several attempts, Jin Yang finally managed to reach a certain level of alcohol purity, which could mean that he could make a disinfectant. Since Yongjik found himself in the Joseon era, a lot of time has passed, and to return back to his time Yongjik couldn't do it. Every day, Yongjik wondered what happened during the time he was here. However, a few months later, Jinyan's child was born, and from that day on, he became fully immersed in life in Joseon. The first thing Jinyan decided to do was tell his father the good news that he finally had a child. Upon arrival, Sejong said that Jinyan had changed a lot in recent months, and that his invention of soap and disinfectant had greatly changed the life of Joseon. Jinyan told his father that his father's mercy was limitless, but he still had some way to go. However, Sejong told Jinyan that he should not be modest, and Sejong told Jinyan that he would give him 200 nyan of silver as compensation for his expenses for creating the soap. Sejong also told Jinyan that the birth of his son was the blessing of the entire royal family, and Sejong remembered that thanks to Jinyang's remedy, his wife returned to normal within a week after giving birth. Sejong then said that from this day forward, Jinyang's disinfectant should be used in the treatment of newborn children and their mothers after difficult births. At this moment, Sejong looked at Jinyan and thought that Jinyan used to be a simple youth, but now he has matured and is benefiting both families and the entire Joseon. Sejong's health deteriorated greatly, making it suddenly difficult for him to breathe. Within seconds, Sejong fell from his throne, and his subjects immediately called doctors to try to bring King Sejong back to his senses as quickly as possible. That same evening, Li Hyang told Jinyang that their father's condition had worsened, but this time Sejong was still able to come to his senses, but he was still worried about his condition. Li Hyang also told Jinyang that Sejong is now constantly thirsty, and his eyesight has deteriorated so much that he now has to hold a book right in front of his eyes to read something. Li Hyang also said that doctors are now giving Sejong a special healing decoction, but it does not have any effect. Then Jinyang asked Li Hyang if his father had told him that he could see flying insects, or a whitish fog. In Yong's past life Jika had a grandfather who suffered from diabetes, and who had similar symptoms to Sejong, sometimes complaining about seeing insects, or cloudy fog. However, Li Hyang told Jinyang that Sejong did not complain of such symptoms, and he only said that he had difficulty seeing things in the distance. Then Jin Yang told Li Hyang that in this case the situation was not critical, and he believed that now Sejong was simply experiencing a slight malaise, which was caused by ordinary overwork. Then Jin Yang believed that if King Sejong's condition continued to deteriorate, then within a year he would completely lose his sight. Jin Yang also remembered that September would soon come, and his mother's birthday would be celebrated in September, and he thought that this would be an extremely good opportunity to influence his father. Li Hyang believed that Jin Yang was planning to do something grand at the royal feast. Jin Yang told Li Hyang that his book only described 3 exercises using heavy weights. Among these 3 exercises, Jin Yang described the squat, bench press, and deadlift in his book. During a deadlift, Jin Yang should try to lift a barbell with a very heavy weight to waist level. Then Jin Yang calculated that by his mother's birthday he should reach 400 kilograms in these exercises. Li Hyang he was shocked that Jin Yang seriously decided to lift 400 kilograms of weight at his mother's birthday. Li Hyang then told Jin Yang how he had recently asked one of Joseon's most experienced soldiers to lift 600 kilograms. However, a barbell with such weight turned out to be too heavy for the soldier, and he was unable to lift the barbell. Jin Yang said that at the moment he is not able to lift 900 kilograms of weight, and to lift 400 kilograms he needs to try hard. However, Jin Yang believed that he should put in all his efforts to become strong enough to lift 400 kilograms of weight, and for the sake of his father. Hyang then told Jin Yang that he would also help him, and he said that his book described too many things that would be difficult for an ordinary person to understand, and he would try to make his book more understandable. Hyang also told Jingtian that he would try to improve his younger brother in his studies. Jin Yang was afraid that in addition to writing the book, he also had to improve his teaching. Li Hyang reminded Jin Yang that he himself had written about honoring his parents, and Li Hyang said that his book should contain at least 13 sutras, the Confucian precepts of the Ming dynasty. Jin Yang felt that it would be extremely difficult for him to raise the level of his teachings, since the only scriptures he had once read were the 5 classics. However, Jin Yang believed that all this should help his father understand even more the importance of a healthy lifestyle. Jin Yang then told Li Hyang that from that day on, he would try not only to lift 400 kilograms, but also to raise the level of his teachings. Then Li Hyang said that he would definitely ensure that their father became interested in Jin Yang's book and understood it. After this, Jin Yang and his brother Li Hyang immediately drank and ate in the name of their father's health. The next day, Jin Yang began to think about how he should prepare to lift 400 kilograms for his mother's birthday. Jin Yang also thought that if he himself did not try to lose all his excess weight, then he would definitely not be able to convince his father to think about leading a healthy lifestyle. Then, before starting his attempts to lift 400 kilograms, Jin Yang decided to first get rid of 8 kilograms of his excess weight. Then Jin Yang believed that in the conditions of this era of smama, an effective way to lose excess weight is to climb a mountain. Jin Yang began to climb the mountain with Li Hyang, who hoped with all his heart that Jin Yang would actually be able to lift 400 kilograms on his mother's birthday. Soon, the Jin Yang finished their climb up the mountain, and he immediately began to raise his level of teachings. Jin Yang began to read a book with various teachings, and he did not understand how he would be able to learn everything that was described in this book. Then Jin Yang remembered Li Hyang's words that he managed to learn all these teachings in 2 weeks. He believed that with such talent, Jin Yang could learn these teachings in a week. In order to lose weight, Jin Yang also changed his diet, replacing it with cabbage, cucumbers, red tofu, and oatmeal. Jin Yang's wife was surprised that her husband would actually eat this and modest foods for a long time. Then Jin Yang told his wife that at his mother's birthday he was going to show all his respect to her and to his father. Jin Yang also said that if he had less fat in his body, he would be able to achieve this goal even faster. After a couple of seconds, Jin Yang started eating and said that he had everything he needed to achieve his goal. Jin Yang's wife apologized to her husband because she again failed to understand all of his plans. At one point, Jin Yang paused before eating when his wife told him that she had decided to add a little salt to his tofu so that it wouldn't taste too bland. Jin Yang's wife called the servants over and ordered them to remove all the food from Jin Yang's table and prepare all his food again. Also, Jin Yang's wife ordered the servants to carefully check her husband's food from that day on, so that all of Jin Yang's food would always be fresh. For a long time, Jin Yang continued to train hard, lifting more and more weight every day. Jin Yang also continued to try to get rid of excess weight by climbing mountains with Li Hyang, and every day they climbed higher and higher. In between training sessions, Jin Yang also did not forget to increase his level of teachings, memorizing more and more wisdom each time. At one point, Jin Yang and his brother were able to climb to the very top of the mountain that they climbed together every day. Jin Yang looked down at Josian and thought only that the time he had spent on all this had passed too quickly. Soon the birthday of Sejong's wife arrived, to which a lot of guests came. There were a lot of people at the birthday party who entertained Sejong and his wife in every possible way. Sejong's wife was very pleased with how people could ride horses in such an unusual way. Sejong himself pretended to like everything, but in reality he could not properly see everything that was happening around him. Jin Yang was scheduled to perform last, and he asked Li Hyang if he had discussed his performance with anyone else. Li Hyang told Jin Yang to the crown princess that Jin Yang plans to lift 300 kilograms, which only made the crown princess angry and didn't believe what was said. Then Li Hyang asked Jin Yang to be sure to carry out his plans, and in this case, their mother might also be interested in teaching a healthy lifestyle. Hyang also told Jin Yang that he was counting on him very much, after which Jin Yang went to show the public the capabilities of his body. Soon it was Jin Yang's turn to wish his mother a happy birthday. Jin Yang bowed his knee in front of his mother and began to congratulate her on her birthday from the bottom of his heart. Jin Yang also told his mother that he owes her everything he had before, what he has now, and what he will have in the future. Meanwhile, several subjects tried to hold iron plates in their hands, which they would then have to place on a barbell. Jin Yin also told his parents that he would like to demonstrate to them his teachings on a healthy lifestyle, which describe methods for healing and improving the body. Sejong noticed that there was a lot of iron behind Jin Yang, and he asked Jin Yang what he was going to do with all these iron things. Jin Yang told his father that all this was just a small performance that he would like to repay his parents with. After that, Jin Yin took off the canvas and told his parents that today he would like to demonstrate to them the capabilities of his body, which they gave him at birth. At this moment, the entire royal guard was shocked by how strong Jin Yang seemed. At this moment, Jin Yang's servants had already managed to place the required number of iron plates on the barbell. The first thing Jin Yang planned to do was bench press, but no one understood what Jin Yang wanted to do. At this moment, Jin Yang was being observed by Li Qi and his undercover soldiers, and they noticed that the barbell had become several times larger and heavier since their last meeting. Meanwhile, Jin Yang had time to prepare to perform a bench press, after which he removed the heavy barbell from the support racks. After a few seconds, Jin Yang was able to lift such a heavy barbell almost effortlessly. Everyone who looked at Jin Yang was shocked that Jin Yang was actually able to lift such a heavy barbell. After the exercise, Jin Yang put the barbell back on the support stands, after which he turned to his parents. Jin Yang told his parents that they were now watching the bench press, one of the most important exercises in his book, which allows you to pump and strengthen the muscles of the chest, shoulders and arms. Jin Yang's mother told her son that she did not fully understand what she had just seen. After that, Jin Yin was asked how much all this iron weighed, and Jin Yin said that in total all this iron weighs 280 kilograms. Sejong and his wife were shocked that Jin Yang was actually able to lift so much weight. Soon, several more people approached the bar with iron plates for Jin Yang's next exercise. After a couple of seconds, Jin Yang's servant placed another couple of weights on Jin Yang's barbell, which made the barbell begin to weigh even more. Jin Yang's next exercise was the barbell squat, during which he must use the strength of his legs to successfully complete the exercise. Jin Yang also said that this exercise perfectly pumps and strengthens the muscles of the legs and lower back. Jin Yang's mother was afraid that Jin Yang was planning to do this exercise with even more weight, and she asked her son to stop. However, Jin Yang had already managed to pick up the barbell, and he said that this barbell now weighs 340 kilograms. After that, Jin Yang slowly began to squat, which this time turned out to be somewhat harder than the previous exercise. Soon, Jin Yang squatted down completely, and all he could do was stand up again with the heavy barbell on his shoulders. After a couple of seconds, Jin Yang began to rise up again with a heavy load. As a result, Jin Yang was able to perform such a difficult squat again with even heavier weight. Sejong and his wife were shocked that Jin Yang also managed to lift such a heavy barbell. After this, Sejong called one of his servants to him, and asked him how this was even possible. Sejong's servants suggested that this was all thanks to the book that Jinyoung was writing. At this point, Jinyoung said that he would now show the most difficult exercise that is described in his book, namely the deadlift. Jinyoung said that during this exercise he would use his heaviest weights, while Jinyoung's servants tried to carry the heaviest iron plates to the barbell. Before Jinyoung started demonstrating the deadlift, Li Hyang told his father that he was a little worried that Jinyoung might hurt his back during this exercise. Then Li Hyang picked up a special belt for deadlifts and said that in this exercise it is necessary to use additional means of protecting the back from sudden injuries. After that, Li Hyang walked over to Jinyoung and pulled a special deadlift belt on him. Before doing the deadlift, Jinyoung said that the barbell now weighs 400 kilograms. Jinyoung also thanked his parents again for giving him such a capable body, and he said that he would continue to take care of it and improve it. At this point, one of Li Qi's soldiers told his captain that, against Jinyoung's standard training, his statements should indicate Jinyoung's lack of sanity. Meanwhile, Jinyoung believed that if he had not been on a diet, then managing such weight would have been somewhat easier. Jinyoung also believed that even with a belt it would be extremely difficult for him to cope with such weight. Then Jinyoung leaned towards the barbell, grabbed it as tightly as possible, and prepared to demonstrate his deadlift. A second later, Jinyoung concentrated all his strength on the barbell, tensing all his muscles. Jinyoung tried with all his might to lift the heavy barbell off the ground, but in the first seconds Jinyoung was unable to lift the barbell steadily.